matter what's offered to you, no matter what happens, you got to stay true to yourself.
So let's jump into your time with John McAfee. Could you maybe speak to like who he was and your relationship with him first? Because some may not, their only idea of him might be skewed by CNN, which not what we want.
Yeah. So John McAfee was the McAfee antivirus guy who created the software. He was an iconic figure, like the Mark Twain of this century. He was extremely brilliant, genius. He's been called evil. He's been called all kinds of different bad things. But the man that I knew was like a father figure to me. And how I met him was actually, I just retired out, sitting in my house in Valley Center, and me and TCAV have done some wild, crazy stuff. We can't talk about it on the podcast, but we've done some weird, crazy stuff, and insane. Sometimes he'll remind me like, "Hey, bro, February 16th, we were up," and I'm like, "Hey, man, don't be texting me that stuff, man. Get out of here, TCAV. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to talk about it." Hey, yo, dog, what's up, dude? And always calling me, telling me stuff. And but anyways, TCAV, he calls me out of nowhere. He's like, "Yo, bro, what you doing, dog?" And I'm like, "Yo, T, what you need, dog? And what you need, man? Why you calling me?" And he's like, "Yo, man, you want to go work for John McAfee?" And I was like, "Who's McAfee?" He goes, "Check your computer, dog." And I was like, "Oh, dang, McAfee, okay." And he knew McAfee. He didn't know McAfee, but McAfee reached out to his like long lost cousin in the SEAL team's nephew, Michael or somebody, and Michael told TCAV, and TCAV told me. And John McAfee wanted the best SEAL out there. Well, I wasn't the best SEAL by any means. I just got out. Timing's everything. So John McAfee calls me, and he's like, "You know who this is, boy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's John McAfee, right?" He's like, "How much you charge?" I said, $500 to $1,000 a day. He said, "That's ludicrous. I only charge my Green Berets $250. Or my Green Berets only charge me $250. I said, "Well, it's your life." And so I think John McAfee, that was the first negotiation he kind of lost. And I was kind of playing on
to say back.
Yeah, I said, "It's your life," but I would have done it for nothing, bro. I would have done it for nothing because I just wanted to venture again. And so anyways, ended up going there that night to Lexington, Tennessee. I thought I was going to go to the Caribbeans, but he was in Lexington, Tennessee. And I was like, "Dang, man, what's this guy doing out there, man?" And so I flew in, left my wife at home in California. I needed the money. I had to pay bills. I had already had an offer from the cartel. Like, it was that bad. And I was like, "No, I can't do that. I can't sell my soul for the cartel. Like, are you kidding me?" And so I went off with John McAfee and ended up being the head of his security at first. And it was just a wild house, like a casino full of smoke. And I meet this like rogue guy, John McAfee. I don't know anything about him, but within a year and a half, I'm running his company. And I say CEO, I was the CEO of his company, but a CEO, what is a CEO? Well, a CEO in my book is somebody who's actually making tons of money, banking it in the treasury for the company of John McAfee. That's how I was at. And he announced it on Twitter on his big 1 million follower account. And but I didn't know I was running this company like as a CEO. He came in and said, "Hey, aren't you going to thank me for promoting you to CEO?" And I said, "Thank you?" I said, "Thank you for what? You worked my ass off like a slave. I eat ramen noodles. The guards are downstairs eating crab legs and Red Lobster every day." I said, "I barely have a drink of water around here." He goes, "Well, damn it, you better thank me. I'm not giving you a bonus either." And I was like, "Okay, thanks, sir." And so that's how our relationship was. Real brutal, back and forth. But we'd have a cigarette and coffee every morning. I debrief him of the day. He gave me a ton of responsibility. It was an unbelievable amount of growing experiences. In my life, I've had times of major growth and experience, like the Marines. Okay, I'm just a kid, drop out of high school. Then I have this big experience. I go to Blackwater, war. There's nothing like war to give you massive lessons of life. But then I'm lacking the intellectual ability. So, but I'm having to write reports. I'm having my girlfriend in Baghdad, Iraq, write all my reports for me, write up awards. Give this guy this. Give this guy a gold-plated AR-15. Yeah, give this guy two. He was heroic, And but then I have to learn things on my own. And McAfee was the intellectual sage type knowledge growing part in business. I had no idea about business, but now I had the war experience. I had the university degree, all this stuff, but when I went to McAfee, I needed to learn the real world application of business. And it was a fire hose of business and crypto and all this and real, world stuff, like never take equity, don't invest like this, a lot of like my McAfee Black Book and stuff. And so he just started teaching me how to negotiate. The best negotiation is non-negotiable. Give them parameters that they have to agree to. There's no this go back and forth. It's kind of slimy. Like if I tell you, I'm sorry, man, I can't do it anymore, and then I do it, I mean, how trustworthy am I after that?
And that
it's ridiculous.
You can pick that off next time too. Like, well, if they say they can't, they definitely still can.
I can only do this for 4 more hours, bro. Then I got to move on. It's like, well, you're a slime ball. I'm not going to deal with you again.
Yeah.
If you only have 4 hours out of this whole eternity that we've been together. Anyway, so he taught me a lot. I did his negotiations as his lead negotiator. Then I was his executive advisor, and then I was his right-hand man. And then I became like a son because he didn't have a son. And man, it was one wild ride after that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun.
Why do you think, we were talking about this offline, why do you think the media chose to demonize McAfee so heavily?
Well, McAfee was a lot like Trump. He reminds me extremely a lot like Trump or who is it? Robert F. Kennedy?
Yeah, RFK.
Yeah. All these guys. He's all about decentralization, peer-to-peer. Why do I need this bank right here controlling my funds, charging me everything, taking? Why do I have to go to this bank right here and tell them what I'm going to do with this money? And somebody would say, a lot of interviewers would say, well, John McAfee, like, why do you care if the bank questions where you're sending your money and what it's for? And John McAfee say, listen to yourself.
Yeah.
You're okay with the British coming in and sleeping with your wives, in the Revolutionary Warrior. You're okay. You've become so desensitized that you're like a freaking robot at the bank. They ask you, where are you sitting this 10,000? You have to tell them in detail where you're sitting. Do you know how absurd that is?
Mm-hmm.
They're asking you what you're doing with your money. Why do you care? And it shouldn't be any of your business. And that was John McAfee's plight. That was his whole argument, was decentralization, peer-to-peer. And that's what destroys the other companies. Uber destroyed taxi, peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
It's me and you. No longer are we going to go through some ridiculous, hyped up, unfair system. Where both of me and you have control over our money, and we do whatever we want. What is it to you? And they'd say, well, that's how the illegal trade of guns and drugs, and John would say, there's just as much as illegal drugs and gun trafficking going on with cash right now. Like, what's cash going to be? How's it going to be different with crypto? And crypto can be traced as well.